everyone, Ryan here, founder of Social Shortcuts. Today I'm going to go through social anxiety and ways that we can help to tackle social anxiety. It's a really common problem. I think this is becoming more of a common problem in the modern age, now that people use technology more, tend to go out less, tend to socialise less. There's ways we can help with this with our coaching. I'm going to give you some ideas of ways to do it by yourself with this video. Basically, it's a mix of two things. You've got A, taking action, getting out there, getting outside of your comfort zone. For someone with very severe social anxiety especially, this is something that has to be done in really small baby steps. And we have a plan for this in our coaching, and I'll give you a rough plan at the end of this video. The second way is the main thing I'm going to discuss today, which is being able to rationalise why it's not a big deal to go and talk to people. Most people understand rationally that it's not too much of a big deal unless you're going into some, I don't know, war zone or gang territory, or you're trying to speak to people in the middle of a fight or something. It's not usually a big deal. People tend to be polite, at least, usually nice. Social anxiety is by and large, nearly all the time, a totally irrational fear. So if you can rationalise and make your brain aware that it's not necessary, then you should be able to start to overcome it. Basically, you'll have, this is much easier said than done, because you have to overcome emotions in your head, which are there for a reason, which I'm going to discuss soon. And basically, you want your logic to outweigh your emotion. You have this irrational emotion here of, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and your logic of, okay, it's not much of a big deal, people are usually nice. You need this to reach the tipping point, and that's when you should be okay. Obviously, this will vary based on your mood, it will vary over time, it will vary based on your experiences, stuff like that. I'm going to do my best today, mainly to explain why rationally social anxiety is irrational, and it's perfectly okay and actually a really good idea to get out there, get speaking to people, making friends, getting dates, networking, whatever, just having a good time. So here we go. So first we need to understand why humans have social anxiety a lot of the time. I do encounter a small percentage of people that appear to have none, but almost everyone will have at least a little bit. If I tell someone to go and chat up a girl or a guy they like who's in the middle of a big group of 10 people, and you have no choice but them all hearing you and all looking at you, then that's something that people will usually be a bit anxious about, at least a bit anxious. But there's a reason why humans have social anxiety, okay? You have to understand humans are just an animal like any other animal. The only reason we're so advanced, and I'm currently sitting here in a completely artificial environment, surrounded by walls, electronic gadgets, everything around me right now is man-made. The only reason for that is because humans are very intelligent, and we have a culture so that we've gradually stored information from one generation to the next that's allowed us to build on our progress, unlike monkeys and dolphins, who we're not loads more intelligent than. They're also really intelligent creatures. Our main differentiating factor has been the ability to develop our society and our technology over time. We are essentially just animals, okay? Bear with me, this is all going to start to make sense. So as animals, we have certain adaptations in our bodies and our brains. Just like a seal is covered in a lot of fat, so it can more easily survive cold weather, a bird has a more streamlined shape to it so that it can fly faster using less energy. Humans have adaptations too. The important one that we're going to talk about is the adaptations in our brains. Humans have not evolved to cope with modern society. Modern society, cities, electronics, industrial factories, things like that can make tons and tons of stuff. Technology that allows us to communicate, the internet, stuff like that. Humans have not evolved to adapt to this. This has only been around for a really short amount of time evolutionarily. Urban societies, arguably a few thousand years. Our natural environment as an animal is to be with the same roughly 100 humans our whole life in a food supply that's really limited. That's another thing people take for granted. We're evolved to live in a time where every day you're worrying about starvation. Now, I'm imagining for basically everyone that's watching this video, you don't have to worry about starvation on a day-to-day basis. So our brains are adapted for a totally different society to what we live in now. In this society, for us to go and make some kind of risky social encounter with another human, perhaps to try and flirt with them, or perhaps to try and make some kind of alliance, comes with a lot of risk. If you're going to have sex, you're going to have babies. If you're going to have babies, that means that one out of your roughly 100 troop of humans is now out of action as a mate. There's only going to be a couple of females there who are eligible for mating, and for the females there's going to be a couple of males who they want to mate with. You're going to have a female that's out of action for at least the time they're pregnant for, probably more when they look after the kid. You're going to have a kid. Human babies are really useless in terms of animal terms. A deer can get up and start walking within a really short amount of time after birth. Human babies need a lot of looking after. On an already strained food supply, this means that it's a huge burden on the troop. Today, you can have your children cared for comparatively really, really easily. There's only so many mates, so everyone's going to be fighting over the mates. And the social hierarchy is so important to your survival as well. For you to have allies who can help you out if you get in a fight with people in your troop, or other humans, or just in any way, is really important. So these social interactions come literally with a risk of death. In today's society, if I'm going to go and chat up a girl, people aren't thinking, oh my god, that's like one of the only girls in the nearest like 100 miles. Now Ryan is going to go and talk to her and now I can't be with her. Oh my god, they're going to have kids within the next like 1 year, and that's going to mean that I'm going to have even less food than I already have. This doesn't happen. However, our brains are still adapted for this kind of environment, and that's why we have this instinctual fear, because according to our instincts, that is something that bothers us. It's an instinct which is now useless. Much like you put a moth, good moth impression there from me, but much like you put a moth in a room with a light, what does it do? Flies into the light, burns itself to death. Haha, stupid moth, you might say. Outside, the attraction to light and heat is a great advantage for the moth. You put it in the new artificial environment, the moth hasn't evolved to cope with this new environment, and it makes stupid choices. That's what humans are doing. We haven't evolved to cope with all of this technology, the absolute abundance of people, the ability to have sex without necessarily having babies really easily, the absolute abundance of food that we have, especially in first world countries, and also another factor, which is social media, which allows us to have a social circle which is thousands of people large, perhaps even more. Whereas back in the Stone Age, you'd have only had 100 people around. And without social media, you can only cope with, I think it was 150 roughly people, friends that you can actually handle as a person. Social media allows us to have way more. So just like the moth hasn't adapted to the room, we haven't adapted to our new society that we live in, our new environment. So we make bad choices like the moth. Going and speaking to new people, making new friends, making fairly risky social gestures, trying to make friends with someone who is kind of not someone you have loads in common with, but you want to make friends with. For example, trying to flirt, trying to have sex, all of these things are now things that carry comparatively way less risk, and it's actually logically a no-brainer to go and do them. However, you have to overcome your inbuilt instincts. Another example of a now useless instinct is our craving for sugar and carbs. Sugar and carbs taste really good. You get a sugary donut, tastes really nice, your brain says well done, eat more. Back in the day, in the Stone Age, which I was just describing, that would have been a really good decision. It gives you lots of energy. You're now going to survive and not have to worry about food so much for another half a day or so. Today, you just get fat. Today, it's a bad idea because it actually makes you unhealthy. So, due to the new environment, we have weaknesses because our brains are telling us to do or not do things that are actually against our interests. For example, eat food that makes you fat and is unhealthy. For example, especially in the case of this video as I'm discussing, not going and speaking to people, being anxious socially. It's an outdated instinct. Hope you understand now. As a long explanation, it was necessary. Understanding a problem is the first step towards solving it. Now I'm going to give you a few more rationalizations that can really help to sort of pinpoint and really make it clear how irrational it is to not be someone who is going out making friends, trying to get dates, stuff like that. So this is one example that I use to highlight how irrational it really is to be afraid of speaking to a new person. Let's take into consideration the risk of a really common everyday activity, crossing the road. Crossing the road is really dangerous, okay? I would say it's the most underrated danger of our time. Much more dangerous than speaking to someone in a bar, speaking to someone in a park, trying to make new friends at a party. Let's imagine you drag someone from the Stone Age, a caveman or cavewoman, and you put them at one end of a busy road and you tell them you've got to cross to the other side. They would be really scared of doing that, and they would not want to do it at all. You have heaps of metal that weigh as much as a whale and go as fast as a cheetah whizzing past you. People will cross the road, their heart rates will not even increase, they'll be listening to stuff on their phone with headphones, they'll be looking at their phone texting, casually crossing the road without caring the world, being inches from death all of the time. And yet people are absolutely shit scared of speaking to someone new. Doesn't make any sense at all. If you're someone who suffers from social anxiety, please think about this every time you cross the road and think about how much it doesn't make sense. Like I explained earlier, it's easier said than done. You can be aware of that and still in the situation freeze up, but at some point your rationalization should overcome your level of irrational emotion, and also this should go down, and you should be able to make some changes, step outside of your comfort zone a bit more each time. So another thing I'd like to say is, in my opinion, we actually live in pretty much a utopia for socializing and for dating. It couldn't actually get much better than it currently is. So this really is the right time in history as of yet to socialize, to date people, to get the right relationship, stuff like that. So we have way more than enough people, especially if you live in an urban area, people from all kinds of different cultures and backgrounds, especially if you live in a city which is quite multicultural, like London. We have social media, so you can keep track of all these people, communicate with them really easily. Right now, I could go and stop recording, grab my phone, message people I know who live on another continent, and receive responses within probably 5 minutes and start chatting to them. That's amazing. We have the ability to have sex without basically any risk if you practice safe sex. We have a really liberal culture in most countries, especially in the Western world, around sex and dating. You're not going to be judged too much. You're not going to be sent to prison. You can just do what you want, basically. This is a really good time to socialise. Probably the best thing about our society, perhaps, is actually this. You can even meet people from the internet. How crazy is that? I can find someone who I feel like is a good person to link up with, someone I think could be a good friend, someone I think might help me with my business, someone who has common interests, someone who engage in, they like the same sports as I do, someone who is a girl who I like the look of. I can do that on my phone. Give me a few hours and I'll have found someone and I should be able to meet up with them. For some people it might take a lot longer, but still that's absolutely amazing. If you're not going out there speaking to people, making new connections, you're wasting your place in this basically utopia for socialising and meeting people. That is the great thing about this time, and you should indulge in it. The next point I want to make is that if you follow the ethos that you're always polite and nice to people, at Social Shortcuts we always promote speaking to new people only by being nice. If you're going to make some kind of cocky joke, you do it in a way that's nice. You don't go over and intentionally make people feel upset for your own personal gain. If you stick to that, there's no way that you're not going to make people's days better. Maybe there'll be one or two exceptions where you stumble across someone who for some reason really didn't want to be spoken to. That's incredibly rare. You're always making people's days better. Humans are hardwired as animals to enjoy speaking to other humans because it helped us to survive in the environments we had in the past, in the Stone Age, that I explained earlier, and it still does as well. So simply the act of communicating with a human lightens people's moods, so you should do that for yourself and for others. If you're going over being nice to people, and that's the way you communicate, and you're a nice person, by you not speaking to the person who is sat opposite you on the train, or the person who is looking at you, was checking you out at the bar, or the mutual friend at the party, you're actually, in a sense, being mean to them, because you're making them miss out on your pleasant company. So make sure not to be mean to people by not speaking to them. Get out there, go let people have their days brightened up by you and your pleasant hospitality. So the next rationalisation that I'd like to propose to you involves the use of maths and statistics a little bit. If that's not something that really resonates with you and you don't really like things explained in that way, you might want to skip this bit. If it's something that does resonate with you, then this might help you as much as it helped me. I believe that from the point when I actually worked this out, I have not once unnecessarily backed out of a social interaction. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So the first part of this rationalisation involves the magic dice, okay? Obviously this isn't a real dice, but let's imagine, okay, a 6-sided dice. You roll the dice. If you roll a 1 on the dice, you lose £1. If you roll any other number, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, then you gain £1. So if you roll a 1, you lose £1. Any of your other numbers, you gain £1. To anyone with a basic understanding of probability, you can argue that you are 5 times better off to roll the dice than to not roll the dice. And considering that you had maybe £10 or more to fall back on, or whatever your currency is, it would be a no-brainer to do anything other than quit your job and roll the dice to get rich if your aim is to make money. The dice is 5 times better off to roll than not to roll. That is a no-brainer. Someone who does not roll the dice, unless they do not want to make more money, is an idiot. So I'm going to come back to the magic dice a little bit later. Now I want to go through some stats involving interactions, meeting new people. These are somewhat approximated, they're not exact, but my point will still stand at the end. So in my experience of my own experience, watching my students and watching other various interactions throughout my life, obviously I haven't counted this because that would be absolutely insane, but I can say roughly only about 1 in 200 interactions turn out badly, okay? If we define good as between the two of you, you both felt better, or one of you felt better at least, between the two of you you felt better mutually, and bad as the opposite. There was an overall negative feeling between the two of you or between the group from the interaction. A neutral standpoint where you're both totally indifferent is probably non-existent, because humans are hardwired to enjoy interaction with other humans. Also, a neutral interaction should count as good because you're developing your skills and your confidence as a social being. But in my experience, roughly only 1 out of 200 turn bad. So you've got, at the moment, it's 200 times better to start a new interaction than it is to not start a new interaction, okay? Now let's compare an example of a realistic example of someone's best and worst experiences from an interaction. This is more or less true for me as well. So, worst example, worst thing that happened, one of them that sticks out in my mind was I was about to speak to someone and they told me to fuck off before I even started speaking to them. I was annoyed by that because they had no justification to do that, and I was actually about to tell them to get out of the way of the door because they were in front of the door to the place I was staying. I think she thought I was about to hit on her. She was probably fed up of getting hit on. She was actually in the way of my door. Get out of the way. Best example is I make a new friend and the friendship lasts for 5 years. Pretty much true, both of these, okay? So you could argue that was 1 hour of negativity versus 5 years of positivity, okay? So now let's do some calculations. If we are to multiply together, be 200 times more likely to go good than bad, and we are to compare the amount of times more good, my example of the good one was, the best one, versus the amount of times the worst one was bad, as a way to compare them in terms of hours of this feeling, we times that all together. 200, I've got it on my calculator here ready to show you, 200 times 365 times 24 times 5. 200, the chance of it going good versus bad. 365, the amount of days in a year. Times 24, the amount of hours in a day. Times 5, the amount of years. Missed out a leap year, who cares? That comes out as, I don't know if this is in reverse because of the camera, 8.76 million. No. Yeah, 8.76 million times more good than bad, okay? Now, let's say these calculations are off. Let's say some of my methodology was a bit stupid here, or perhaps my worst situation was actually several days and my best situation was only 2 years. It's still a ridiculously good outcome, okay? The magic dice, I'm going to go back to the magic dice now. The magic dice was 5 times better off to roll than not to roll. That was a no-brainer, okay? If this is even 1,000 times better to start the interaction than not, and according to that example I just gave you there, it's about 9 million times better, that's even more of a no-brainer. And the main point from this is that there's so much to gain from interacting with new people. You're missing out if you don't. Friendships and dating, relationships, stuff like that are things that make humans the most happy and are often the most fulfilling things in life. And they're also really useful for any progress you want to make as well, with your career, etc, etc. So you're really missing out. It's an absolute no-brainer to take advantage of a ridiculous situation that we currently have in our society, of it being so easy and convenient to socialise, to network, to date, to have sex, etc, etc. Like I explained a bit earlier, we basically live in the perfect environment for this. Make use of it. If you don't, you're making a stupid decision, okay? You have your instincts that are telling you no, 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 but you are making a stupid decision essentially, just like the moth headbutting the light until it burns itself to death. Don't starve yourself of positive experiences till you die. So now some of you might feel a little bit confused and think, okay, if it's so useful to speak to new people, why would I not spend all of my time, all the time, speaking to new people? Perhaps every single person I walk past on the street should be someone that I speak to. Obviously that's not a good idea, necessarily. I'm going to explain why, okay? So different people have different priorities in their life. For many of you watching this video now, your priority may be to work on your social skills, to get new friends, to work on your dating life, to improve in that area somehow. For lots of other people, and probably for lots of people also watching this video, it may be to work on their career. It may be to produce some great piece of art. It may be just to enjoy their life. Okay? So you have to think about what's most important at the time. I'm now going to give to you 6 reasonable excuses, okay? If you come across an interaction, there are some times when it's actually not a good idea to go and speak to them, okay? But what you don't want to do is allow yourself to make up stupid excuses as to why you shouldn't do it. I've heard crazy ones before. I think my favourite one was, I can't speak to them because I'm wearing gloves and it makes me look like a terrorist. Some of them might be, oh, that person's wearing headphones. Speaking to a new person wearing headphones is, I've never seen someone not take their headphones out to be polite and go and speak to someone. It'd be rude not to. So if you don't have these excuses, reasonable excuses, the list I'm about to give to you set in stone, you run the risk of your mind coming up with unnecessary excuses. If it's in a grey area, should I speak to that person or shouldn't I? And you're feeling anxious, your mind is always going to give the benefit of a doubt to, no, okay, let's just avoid it. And usually that's the wrong option. So, reasonable excuse number 1 is you can honestly say this is going to be more likely to end up in a bad outcome. Remember, we define a bad outcome as just between the two of you, you felt worse because of it, and your experience in life is slightly worse because of that interaction. You've been better off without it. That might be the case if you're speaking to someone who's in the middle of an argument, or someone who is really concentrating on something and doesn't want to be distracted, or for some reason looks like they really, really don't want to speak to someone. That would be a bad time to go and speak to them. That's reasonable excuse number 1. Number 2, you're doing something you consider more important. This goes back to our list of priorities, okay? If your priority is your career and you want to get promoted at your work, you've found your dream job, you really want to excel, it's one of the first days, or just in general, your career is more important, or some sort of hobby is more important to you, going and finishing your artwork or going to your sports club is more important to you than meeting new people. If that's the case and you're late for your work and that might get in the way, or you're currently doing work and you don't want to get distracted, something like that, that might be a time when you can think, okay, I'm not going to go speak to a new person. Often on my sessions, when I'm coaching people, I'll see girls that I like, for example. I won't go and talk to them because making the coaching as good as possible is currently more important to me. So I make that decision. If the next person is 10 minutes late and there's a girl that I like, I don't have an excuse not to go and talk to her. It's not going to end up in a bad outcome. The following reasonable excuses that I'm about to list to you don't apply. I have no choice, according to this list that I'm giving to you, not to go and do it, and I make myself do it. Reasonable excuse number 3 is if your only intention is to chat them up, flirt with them, date them, have sex with them, have a relationship with them, and they currently have a partner, or you do, then personally I wouldn't advocate going and engaging in that interaction unless you can see it leading to something more platonic, because it's quite likely to end up in a bad outcome. So basically this is kind of the same as reason number 1. Number 4, you'll probably see them again another time and it'll be much easier to speak to them. One time there was a girl who I really liked the look of in a Starbucks, and before I was doing coaching, I'd always get 2 huge cups of tap water with no ice, which really made me stand out. She probably liked me a bit as well, and she started commenting to me a little bit every time I was there. For me to go and instantly try and chat her up properly and get her number at that time would have been a bad idea. She's serving other people, she's got her workmates around her. I've only got a time frame of 20 seconds or so before the customer nearby starts getting impatient and she feels under pressure. So, because this is in an area which I was around a lot, I knew that there would be a better opportunity. She's unlikely to leave that place for her work for quite a long time, so this is quite a good gamble to take. Eventually I saw her out having a cigarette. That was the right time to go and do it. So if you feel like there's going to be an easier time is someone that you see regularly. They're in your social circle. If we count also in your social circle here places that you frequent or places that you go past, etc. If that's the case, then you may want to leave it until there's an easier time. Number 5, very similar to the last one, the situation is going to get easier at some point. Also, we can include if someone is currently on the phone or someone's on the dance floor right next to the speakers. Those are both situations which are very likely to get easier within a short space of time. Instead of shouting your ass off whilst they're trying to dance or trying to interrupt their phone conversation, just wait until that situation's over. They've moved to a quieter area of the venue or they're off the phone. That could be a better time to start talking. Reasonable excuse number 6 is if this is not really an area you feel like you need to work on. You're not going to gain much from learning or becoming more confident or more comfortable by going and speaking to a new person, and you know, based on your current situation and based on information you might know about the person you're considering interacting with, that you're not going to want to end up being friends with them, seeing them again in any way. That might be a time where speaking to them is a bit of a waste of time. This stops me going to speaking to every single person, even who is way out of my age range and I have no commonalities with at all, every time I see them, because it would be a waste of time. Lastly, I'm going to give you a rough action plan that you can take, okay? The main sort of thinking behind this is that you have baby steps towards doing things that make you feel more and more anxious gradually. So for example, if you're someone who struggles to talk to strangers, 10 times is usually a good amount of times. 10 times ask someone for directions. If you are truly lost, you would ask someone for directions. You wouldn't end up starving to death because you were afraid to ask someone for directions. So that's a really easy one to start with. After that, give 10 people a compliment. Start small talk with 10 people. Some people might find one stage harder before the other one. But just have little baby steps and repeat each baby step a lot of times before you go on to the next step, so you're totally comfortable with the next step up. If you're someone who is too scared to even leave the house, for example, this might be a really severe case, then challenge yourself to go outside and get your shopping rather than buy it online, for example. Do that as many times as you need to, usually quite a lot, until you feel comfortable with it. Then try to ask the shop assistant for some help with your shopping. Where's this item? Something simple like that. Gradually build it up and up and up. We have a really detailed structure which is also really flexible and tailored to the individual as we get to know you better in our coaching. So if you're someone who struggles with this is something we can really help with, okay? We use a mix of these rationalizations, some of which will be tailored to you, but a lot I've gone over in this video. And we also use a structure which has been designed over a long period of time to be really effective at helping people with this kind of thing. And I have, and our other coaches have, really helped people with this kind of thing, made them a lot more confident, started to get them a lot more friends, dates, help them network for business or work purposes, and just feel a lot more confident. So if that's something you might be interested in, you're someone who suffers from social anxiety, it stunts you, it stops you from making new friends, talking to that girl, talking to that guy, I would really consider getting our coaching, honestly. Remember, we do a free trial, so check that out, give it a go, and we can definitely help you. That was Ryan, long video, social anxiety, common problem, really bad problem, really illogical, unnecessary. We need to evolve and get past it as humans. But until then, we're here, Social Shortcuts. See you soon.